Hey, I'm Honesty,
I'm Lauren.
and this is Redeemed Motherhood.
Um, so we're really excited about getting this launched and going for really everybody. Really, I think more for ourselves too. This is something that we've kind of talked about for a few years and kind of gone back and forth about how we wanted it to look. Um,
I think it's funny that we have talked about it for years.
mm,
And before, when we talked about it, it was more of we had such crazy stories, things that would happen to me or you, and we'd be laughing about it and talking about it, making jokes about it. And we were like, man, we really need to start a podcast or a reality TV show or something.
yeah.
And I think it was always the plan, but I think it was we were waiting on God to, like, it's funny how now that we are both like in what I would say our best walks with God,
Yeah, I think no, I know what you're saying. Like I think I'm really grateful that we didn't start anything then.
Yeah.
Because I know that we don't really resonate with who we were
Yes.
then.
It's almost as if God was like, there's a reason we didn't start it.
Yeah.
You know, it's God put us where He wanted us before we were able to push through this. So,
and I don't even think we necessarily planned to like talk about this, but I feel like that right there that you just said speaks so much on like that point in our friendship.
mm-hmm.
That one point in our friendship where like things had really fallen off.
Yeah, we didn't talk for
a long time.
Yeah.
And even when we did start talking again, it was very like
hesitant.
Yeah. There was a lot of the hesitancy. And so it's kind of I think that was it's really wild that you said that because like I don't think we were in a place like we are now until we both started walking with God closer.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
So, well, that tells you a lot about about this. But I think one thing that seemed to be a very common theme in a lot of our discussions when we would have Bible studies together was vulnerability in Christ and how difficult it is to achieve that, especially when you are new to your walk or, really restarting your walk. And I know that's probably not a good term to use because I feel like once you start your walk, you don't really ever stop.
But you can lack that relationship.
Yeah.
You fall off, like maybe you stop going to church for a while or you get out of your Bible. And I think everybody goes through stages like that.
Yeah.
I know that it's coming up on 2 years since I got saved.
Yeah.
And there have been some dark times in that. It's not always been just this perfect walk of glory. Like there's some dark stuff in there too. But the one thing that has brought me through is God.
Yeah.
And just,
well,
and
like I look at like my case a lot too, that I shortly after or really shortly before my husband and I got married, we didn't have anybody to marry us because we weren't going to church anywhere. And so his childhood pastor invited us to her church, the church that she was at the time. And we started going and we really, really liked it. She married us, and then we kept going. We just felt so at home in that church. We got saved together, became members of that church. But I can like absolutely tell you without a shadow of a doubt that what I was doing then still did not give me the fulfillment that I have in my walk with Christ now. And my walk then looks very different from how my walk now looks. Like my walk now looks completely different from the way it did then. And it's because I was so much more concerned with going to church and, being present physically, but I was not present mentally. I was just like, okay, well, box checked. I think a lot of us say that, like, oh, the box is checked.
Yeah.
I did it.
Checklist faith.
Yeah. And that's exactly where we were. And so it really wasn't until I wish I could tell, like, I wish I could, like, pinpoint that very moment that it just
changed.
Like, God was like, listen, get it together. Like, I'm just going to set you on fire myself, I guess. And I don't know. I just had like a whole new excitement for building my relationship with God.
Right.
And it's not been the same since.
I think for me, like, I grew up and was taught that you believed in God. I was taught that Jesus died on the cross for us, and we went to church on holidays. Which was great. Like, but I never, up until the day I got saved, I'd never experienced the Holy Spirit. And I know that sounds crazy. Like, I like, looking back now that I am saved, I see evidence of God working.
Oh yeah.
There are things that, like, just stories, like things that happened, and it's like, oh, what a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. And I even remember thanking God in those times, but
never really like knowing what you were saying.
Like, like, you thank God, but like, do you feel that thing?
It's like
do you feel that gratitude?
It's like a muscle memory thing.
Yes.
Like, you just reflexively say, oh, thank God.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the day that I went to church was Easter Sunday, and I got saved. And God was working on me the minute I walked in that door, because, I mean, I'm not ashamed to say I was hungover.
Oh,
I know.
I don't even think I knew that.
I was hungover. Honesty. I know. It wasn't like a bad, like, I didn't get like sloppy drunk.
No, but I know, and not to air that dirty business out at all, but you were really struggling knowing that your papa was not going to live much longer.
Here's the revelation that I have had. My grandpa was my rock.
Yeah.
He was everything to me. And that day that I was sitting in church and I got saved, the voice that I kept hearing, God or Holy Spirit, whatever it was to start off, my grandpa obviously was sick and he had lung cancer. This was the first time he had been to church or been out of the house in months. And we got there, and we weren't late for church, but we were like walking in at the time the bell was ringing.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandpa was sitting up front. He always sat in the back, but because he was in a wheelchair, he was up front.
I was like, he had a front row seat.
Yes.
That is crazy.
So we walk in and I'm like, I'm not going to come to church and not sit with my grandpa. So I sit front row pew, and it was on from that moment on. Like, I'm not even kidding. I sat down, and one of the church members was singing a song, and I wish I could tell you what song it was, but it was about, because it was Easter, so it was about him being risen.
Yeah.
But the whole time, like, this woman was staring into my soul while she was singing. And I was like, what?
Stop making eye contact.
Yes. And it's funny because I've told my testimony in church since then. And she told me, like, when I told them about her, like, staring into me, I was like, you honestly, like, now that I look back on it, she looked like an angel. Like, she just looked like she was glowing.
Yeah.
And she literally said, she was like, I seen God all over you that day.
He was going to hold you down.
He was not letting me out of that church until I gave my life to him. And I'm so thankful for that. But the voice kept telling me, your papa, like, it was basically like, your papa is going to be going to heaven soon.
Yeah.
Like, it's if you want to say that you can see him again, you have got to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that I got saved just so I could make sure that I could see my papa again, but it was that day sitting in that front pew that like God just covered me in the love that I always needed. I'm going to cry. All the love that I ever needed in my life, he wrapped me in it right then and there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even wait for I made it till altar call, but he didn't even get altar call out of his mouth, and I was at that altar. And I was like, I need to get saved.
Yeah.
And it wasn't but a month later my papa passed away.
But I think it says so much too that, you know, he didn't wait until your papa passed and pull you out of that, because that would have been
probably been nearly impossible. And I think what my point about the whole story of that is, like I said, my grandpa was my rock.
Right.
God pulled me aside. Like it was almost like I didn't come to this realization until recently. Actually, I don't remember what verse it was, but it was basically telling me like that my father is the one in heaven. And while I've always looked at my grandpa as a second dad, I mean, he had a big hand in raising me. While yes, he was my rock, he was always there for me, so was God. And God is my rock.
Yeah.
And like now that I have come to know God and been saved, I realize that no human on this earth can be that rock, that foundation that I need.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like he was saying, like, why don't you place everything that you put, all this faith that you put in your papa,
in me,
because I got to take him now.
Yes.
Okay. So like, I need you to rely on me.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it means so much more to you that, you know, he got to be there to physically see you get saved.
Yes.
Because I think you know that he would have been proud of you even if it would have been after the fact.
Yes.
But knowing what we know about what happens if we pass before, you know, Jesus comes back is like, I think it gives you so much more peace.
Yes.
That he was physically on earth.
Yes. And like I know that he knows without a shadow of a doubt. And it's funny because when it was like the next week I went over there after I got saved, and we were just sitting talking, and like he was talking about how proud he was and talking about making sure that I had a Bible, which somebody gifted me one. And it was he just looked at me and he was like, you know, this changes everything, right?
Yeah.
And at the time I was like, yeah, but
you didn't really know it.
I didn't really know it. And now it's like,
I think in your head you're like, you might have thought like, I have to change.
Yes, it was more of I mean, it was like, yes, I know I have to change. Like I need to clean up a lot of things, but I didn't have to.
Mm-mm.
Because Jesus came to me where I was.
Yeah.
Hungover in church.
I will never not laugh at that. I'm sorry.
But I mean, and you know, he came to me. He met me where I was, and yes, there were things that I had to clean up along the way, but I didn't do them on my own.
No.
And it was never a checklist of, okay, you got to clean this up, you got to clean this up. It was just Holy Spirit convicted me in the times that I needed. And it was the same year that I got saved, that New Year's Eve, where I got really drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I hate to admit it, but I did. After I was saved, I hit a low place. The devil, he was really working on me that day. And I didn't know how to, at this point, I was a few months into my walk, and I was never taught how to walk with Jesus. And it's not something that you necessarily have to be taught. So let me say that. But I didn't know what that walk would look like. I'd never seen it.
But I think it's such an interesting thing to say, because building off of that, and I'll of course still let you finish
No,
talking
you're
about
fine.
that, but that says so much too about like how I was raised and why I didn't ever really have a strong relationship with Jesus, despite the fact that I went to church every day growing up. But then, you know, things that happened in my family, obviously, that kind of severed that whole thing. But even still, like, once my childlike faith had faded, but it's because I, my, my family relied on church to build my faith.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing that we did in the household was like when we were still a unit and we ate dinner together, we prayed over our dinner.
Right.
But it was never like, it was not exemplified anywhere else in our household. So it's like, yeah, a walk can't necessarily be taught, but it can be, you can set an example.
Right.
And I think that's why I strayed.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, I had no problem straying and saying like, oh, well, I don't think, like, let me say this. I think that's why I felt like I knew better for myself, because I didn't really have anywhere at that time that I thought God was really like leading me. I felt like I was just kind of doing things on my own.
Right.
And again, because I had not been shown any example of what it looks like to allow God to lead you.
Right.
So, no, I think I absolutely agree that a walk can't be taught, but it can absolutely be shown.
Yes. And, you know, we went, going back to what I was saying, and not that you interrupted or anything, but it's just that I let the devil get in my head, and I started drinking that day, and I woke up the next morning, and it wasn't necessarily, I called you.
Yeah.
And I was like crying, and I was upset, and I was like, I felt so shameful because
You backslid.
I backslid.
And what did I say?
And you were like, and I was like, I feel like I felt like God was not necessarily punishing me, but he was like,
Angry.
Tis, tis, tis.
Yeah.
And you were like, that is not God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the enemy trying to make you
Feel
shame. But it was that day. I haven't had a sip of alcohol since.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that.
No, you should be.
I mean, I wasn't necessarily struggling with an alcohol addiction or anything, but it was just something I did. But it was it was either a social thing that I did, like I felt like to socialize,
Mm-hmm.
or it was either I socialized and drank, or I drank when I needed numbing.
Yeah. And that's such a big thing.
Yes. And that's when I was like, you know what? This is not for me. Like, Jesus is for my pain, not alcohol.
I love that song.
I know.
But, and I did want to like touch on that too, when you talked about like, it's not a checklist of now you got to change this, now you got to change that. It's, he's going to convict you on anything that is either keeping you from him or not exhibiting Christ-like behavior.
Exactly.
And I definitely think the things that are keeping you from him, he's going to knock out of you first. He's going to come down on you for that first.
Yes.
Because it's like, in order to exhibit Christ-like behavior, you have to know Christ.
Yes.
In order to know Christ, you have to allow Christ in you.
Yes.
And so in order to do that, you can't be nothing between you and him.
Right.
You know, so.
And it's funny because like, it's not just alcohol or drugs or cigarettes. It's not even, it can be as simple as a show you watch or a book you read. Like, you know, the books that I used to read, I have not been able to read anything but Christian
Clean-
books.
clean books.
Christian
Very
books.
clean.
Well,
Well, because they're the same thing as,
yes.
yeah.
So,
we can't go after men for it
right.
and then think that, well, like, reading it is okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a double standard.
Right.
And because it still creates unrealistic expectations.
Right.
I literally saw something about that today.
And I remember the time that we actually had a conversation about the books that we would read, and I was still reading them, and you were just talking about how, I mean, you didn't shame me by any means.
Okay.
You didn't shame me, but you were just like, I don't feel like, and I even told you then, like, I made an excuse and
I
was
read
like,
it for the plot. I don't read for
yeah,
that.
well, I was like, I just read it to read it. It's not for anything else. And at the time it wasn't.
No, absolutely.
But God sure did convict me, because I have not
Because at
read
the end
anymore.
of the day, and it's funny because this was not at all what we were going to talk
No,
about.
we're just going with the flow.
That's what happens when you're both ADHD. But regardless, like, it still sets unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
Even if you're like, I'm reading it for the plot. Well, the plot is made up.
Yes.
The love story is made up.
Right.
So you're going to start looking at your husband and be like,
why don't you do that?
why don't you ever talk to me so sweet like this? Why don't you
Yeah.
ever do these sweet things for me? Like,
Yeah. And then that's the enemy sliding his way
yeah,
in.
because it's like, first of all, this is not real.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, I think back all the time, especially as a teenager. Oh my gosh. And I have an insane amount of gratitude. Like, I think every day I am hit with so much gratitude for so many things. One of the biggest things, though, is the amount of times God protected me when I was not walking with him.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Like, you would have never found me denying him, because I knew, like, at the end of the day, don't ever do that.
Yes.
But that was out of pure fear. Like,
yes.
I don't ever want to deny God, because I know that's, like, the unforgivable sin.
Right.
But I was not doing anything else by the book.
Right.
And God, oh my gosh, kept me safe in so many situations.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, there's no other explanation.
Yes.
And I mean, again, the amount of gratitude I have for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I have so much gratitude for is just all that he's revealed to us in the last year. Mm-hmm. About, like, when we really thought we had it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's quite literally like the veil being pulled over. And
yes.
You're like, whoa.
Yes. There have been so many times where we've been mid-conversation and I've just realized, like, just his grace and mercy and everything. And it's funny when you have those realizations, like, you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, he is so good. And
when I think all the time too, I'm like, just think, like, a year ago, maybe a little more now. I don't know. Time is a concept to me. Of a year ago.
It's the kids.
It is. Oh, I could have still been thinking, like, okay, as long as I read my Bible, mm-hmm. or pray or go to church, I'm doing what I need to do. But it's I don't know how to put this correctly into words other than, if all I'm truly doing is regurgitating and going through the motions, I'm not going to have a relationship with Christ.
Right.
I'm going to have other people's relationship with Christ.
Yes.
I'm going to see what I think I should be doing.
Yes.
I'm going to do what I see other people doing. I'm essentially going to live through other people's relationship. Does that make sense? So it's like, I have so much, I'm so insanely grateful for the fact that God essentially got down in front of me.
Right.
And was like, you just have to want.
Right.
You have to want me and I will do the rest.
Yes.
I will let you know what you need to be doing.
Right.
And I will help you along that way.
Yeah.
You know?
And see, like when I first got saved, I was, it was more of a checklist faith at the time. Now, like, I know I said that I didn't, but looking back at my walk then versus now is totally different. And I mean, I know the longer you walk with God, the more He's going to like the more time He has to convict you of the things that need to be changed.
Yeah.
And you know, at first it was I would do like a daily devotion, and then a few months in, like I really started like actually reading the Bible. And then I fell away for a little bit, not necessarily away from God, just
your routine,
my routine.
But
it was because it was a routine. Yes. But now it's not a checklist. It's not a I have to do this. It's a I want to do this. It's I need. And it's not a I need because a checklist, but I need it because it fulfills me. It's like needing it. It's I need it like I need water or
literally about to say that. I was gonna say it's like that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. It's like it's not like a okay, it's time for me to do this. It's you feel a thirst or a hunger.
Yes.
And you're like, I've got to do something about this. Like, I need to read something, anything. And I get like that. I get like restless.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'll just flip it open. I'll just flip my book open and be like, all right, so even if it, you know, and it just, you're going to get something out of it.
Right.
And
that is one of the biggest things about the Bible is, you know, yesterday when we made our post about what everybody was reading in the Bible.
Was that yesterday?
Was it? Yes, it was.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was. We'll see. I was thinking about how God gives us this book, this Bible. And it's not just to read about Him and to know Him. It's our communication with Him. That's how He speaks to us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the only way He speaks to us. He will speak to us in whatever way He sees fit. But if you want to hear from God, right there is your key.
And if you want to know if what you're hearing is from God, it will be backed by this.
Right.
Like it will not be disproven by this.
And I think a lot of people, I think there's a lot of, let's say, churchgoers. The checklist. I think there's a lot of churchgoers that it's like a checklist. They go to church, they have their Bible, but how much are people getting into their Bible? And I'm not pinpointing anybody. No. But I was that person.
And that is why I say that I feel an insane amount of gratitude, because I don't know what I did for Him to convict me of that.
Right.
I don't know what I did for Him to knock on my head and be like, you're not in it yet.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I'm not saying like I'm special compared to those people,
right.
But I really don't know what I did to, I don't even want to say deserve. Like, I don't want to say I feel unworthy, but I don't know how to explain it, you know?
You don't know how you got you don't know how you got so blessed to be able to receive that conviction.
Yeah.
But that's what God does.
When you see so many other people still following that trot line.
Yes.
Still following that trot line, and you're like, that was me, but why am I over here now?
And they're not.
And they're not.
And I think it's just a matter of opening yourself up. I mean,
okay, that brings us back. That brings us into our vulnerability in Christ.
I mean, it does. You have to be. I mean, yes, Jesus is going to meet you where you are, and
Yeah.
He is going to change you. But your heart, you have to be open in that.
Yeah.
You have to be accepting and vulnerable.
I think it also, like, you have to hit a point with yourself where you're like, you realize that at any point, any which way you turn when you are trying to self-improve, you're going to find something else wrong with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you get, at least for me, I got so caught up in my head that I'm like, it really could have put me in such a dark spot that I had no other choice. I think I truly had no other choice than to just be like, all right, I give up.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing with myself. I don't know who I am as a person. Like, I was postpartum.
And that's
the most vulnerable.
It is.
Oh.
I like to explain postpartum as the way I felt is I was homesick.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I was so homesick, but didn't have that home to go to. And I'm not saying that it's not about childhood home or anything like it was just this feeling of being homesick, but that home that you were wanting was not there.
Yeah.
And that is so crazy because now that the realization is our home is Jesus. This world is not our home.
No.
And that feeling of homesick, like we're earning or yearning for that.
I feel like
heavenly
so
home.
many people too. I think even Kat Von D mentioned something about that. People like Kat Von D who tried the whole world, all the things of the world,
yes,
and still will always say something was missing until they find Jesus, and then it's like, whoa,
yes.
And then it's like with me, who grew up with always knowing about that, and still getting to feel that same fullness of like, I thought I knew and I had no idea.
Yeah, that's exactly like even before I got saved, like I was taught to believe in God. Yeah. I was, we went to church on holidays and occasions. And I mean, I don't ever want to say that I didn't believe, but it was a game changer that day that I got saved. And I don't know what I believed before, but it's not the same as now.
Because, and again, this is something that we see so much of, and it really, I don't even necessarily want to call this discernment. I think I want to call it not even really just common sense in your walk, but like the amount of people, okay, that will say, yeah, I believe in God, or I pray, and yeah, I know Jesus died for me, but are still seeking worldly approval. Like they're still going after horoscopes. They're still, they're still practicing witchcraft that they don't realize they're doing. They're still opening all these doors to allow darkness and evil in. And then you're sitting here and you're looking at them and you're like, hey,
wake up.
If you leave that alone and just everything that you're asking of this worldly stuff, ask of God.
Yes. And there's a difference in believing in God and walking with God.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that was the very first conversation I think you and I really dug into.
Yes.
About our walks with faith is, and why I say like we had it all wrong.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that we've been friends for 12 years now.
Yeah.
And I know we've had conversations about God prior to me getting saved. And I even remember before I got saved, like you talking about you and Adam going to church and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's great, and part of me, like, I even think I mentioned that, like, I would love to get into a church.
Yeah.
And it's funny how God has built us up it's like there was always a purpose for our relationship, friendship.
I think he started moving us, you know, I don't want to say simultaneously, because it was like, I'm
Right.
going to push this one, and I'm going to push this one. He was definitely
Yes.
waiting for one of us to look at the other and be like,
Yes.
what are you doing?
and it was almost like we helped each other in our walks and did not even realize it. And it's not that we were intending on helping each other.
No.
It's just he used both of us individually to get each other where he wanted us.
And I think because I know that and like where I am now, I like want to slap myself on the wrist for this. I didn't talk about God with you too much because I kind of knew what your reception of it would have been.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been like, because you had a lot of anger.
Yeah.
A lot of anger. And I know that if I would have been like, honestly, just pray about it, you would have been like, I'm going to backhand you.
If you tell me to pray about it
I'm literally going to kill you.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing we wanted to talk about was our post from the first week about who in the Bible do you resonate the most with in your life right now. And Honesty and I kind of co-collaborated on this, not on purpose. And it was because we kind of identified with the same person for slightly different reasons. But we both said that we resonate with Martha, Lazarus' sister. And to give you the backstory, they invited Jesus into their home. And Martha was basically running around and just doing all these things, trying to play host, And Mary was just at Jesus' feet, just soaking in his presence. And I said that I resonate with Martha simply because I allow so many things to distract me from when I should be taking time to just sit in God's presence,
right,
and read or pray or just take that time. And I allow things to just get in the way.
Yeah. And it's easy with the busyness of life to do that. I picked Martha because I typically am so focused on serving and studying and just doing all the things that I forget to just sit and be with Jesus. And, that's one thing that I've been praying that he works on me, is because, like, yes, I read my Bible, and that's not saying that that's not to be with Jesus, but to actually just sit and soak in his love.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, like, I really did today. When I was at the coffee shop, like,
Yeah.
I went and I didn't get as much reading as I wanted to get done, but it was because, like, I just sat there and just soaked it in. Like, I was almost in tears at the coffee shop, just sitting there, just.
Well, have you ever heard someone
being.
say too, like, and I'm probably this person to you, that, like, are you ever with a friend and they do enough talking for the both of you? And you're just like, sure, you have the whole floor.
Yes.
And it's like, we need to have that same mindset.
Yes.
Of like, just sit and just be quiet.
Yes.
And just listen. Let him talk.
Just let him just be.
Mm-hmm.
Be still. Be still. Yes. I really do have a hard time just being still and being with him. But also, one thing that I do not want to forget to talk about is the fact that Brian has, like, really been interacting with all of our posts, every single one of them. And I love that. And I loved his interaction with this one about how he
resonates with Paul.
Yes. Yeah. And I won't go into everything with Brian, but God really has done a work on his life.
Yeah.
And that is one person that I feel like you have those people in your life that you're like, if God can do it to them, he can do it to anybody.
And I feel like Paul is one of those people that if anybody says like I resonate with Paul, you're immediately going to be like,
yeah,
why?
Yes.
Like, never in a sense of like, oh, why do you think you get to deserve that
Yes,
title?
not in that, but it's just a matter of Paul.
Paul is such a, and I don't want to say he's an underrated example because I mean a lot of people know about Paul.
Yes. And you go from the darkest of sin.
Yeah.
To, I mean, God really turned him around.
And that's why I want to say,
I mean, met him where he was.
Yeah.
Knocked him off that horse. Sure did.
What did he blinded him? What was it? Was that he blinded him?
I will have to actually go back and read.
Y'all are welcome to even let us know.
Yes.
What, he blinded him for like 3 days.
Sorry.
But yeah, and another thing too about Brian, if you watch this, is I have absolutely blown Honesty's phone up for the past 3 days.
Yes.
Since starting to read Rightly Dividing the Word. Because I think I have gotten hit from all angles with so much information that I've had to set the book down. I'm only on page like 12, just so you know. Because I've had to set the page down and just destimulate myself. Because I'm just, yeah.
And she keeps coming to me and telling me, like, she's sending me pictures of the pages, and I'm like,
and so, I'm like, I know you're going to buy this book, but I just have to tell you this.
I ordered it, and it will be here tomorrow. But I'm scared because the way she's dug into this, like, I'm scared that I'm not going to have a life outside of it, to be honest.
And I've been silent for a whole day because I'm like, okay, I've basically spoiled the whole first half of the book.
Well, I've also been so busy today, and so we didn't do our regular FaceTime today. But
I mean, this is
pretty quick. Yeah.
So, but anyways, we are still going to post throughout the week every day, and every post is always, it stays open, of course. If you ever think of an answer to a post in the past, please feel free to go, leave your comments there.
Also, one thing that we would love is the interaction that we've gotten has been great. We love that everybody is supporting us. But I do want to say that we are always here to talk to if you have questions. Even if we can't answer those for you, we will certainly get back to you. We will dig
or
in
somebody
our
will.
Yeah, we will figure out a way to help you in some way, shape, or form. That's one thing that we want to do is help people further their walk with Christ.
We don't have any sort of like specific posting schedule as far as episodes. So, and it's really just going to be whenever we both find the time. But I guess that's really all I have.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Love, bye.
God bless.